Coming up on episode 149 of Creative Writing, I'm talking about over and under investing.
I can't go back to sleep, it's almost light. These restless thoughts have kept me up again tonight.
Hey, and welcome to Creative Writing. This is the podcast for you, a writer, blogger, or creative who wants to build an online platform without being smarmy. I'm your host, Kirsten Oliphant, and I'm so glad that you are listening, whether it's your first or 149th time of listening to the show. Welcome. And a special thank you to those of you who started listening at the beginning and are still listening. So it was a little rough and a little different at first. I'm glad you've been on the journey with me. It seems a little special to be getting near 150, although I would actually be there a lot faster if I hadn't taken so many breaks along the way, but that's okay because we're here now. I'm here. And tonight we're going to talk about over and under investing. These are two equal and opposite errors that I see all the time. And so I'm going to give you guys some tips and share where you might be over or you might be under investing. A lot of it will have to kind of center around writing and writers, but I think it's going to be applicable to a lot of things. And I will share places as well, examples that I did blogging and other places building a platform where I wasted money. So it's not just writing, but I will have some specific examples there as well. So if you want to find the show notes, because I'm going to have links and notes and tips and things like that you might want to see, you can just go to creativewriting.com/149 for the show notes. Okay, so here we go. We're talking about over investing and under investing. And I think of these as two kind of equal and opposite errors. Although in some ways they're not equal, because I have seen a lot of people lose more money by overinvesting, but you're also not going to make any money if you underinvest, or you might, but it's unlikely. So these are equal and opposite errors that I want to kind of address and help you with. And this is really going along with the last couple of episodes. I've talked about wasting money in episode, 147. And I talked last week in episode 148 about wasting your time. So this is going to go hand in hand with those, especially 147. And in the show notes, I'm also linking to a post that I did on 6 questions to ask before you invest, which is really helpful because I've just been, I guess, as I've started making more money and investing and testing some things, I feel like I have been able to achieve a positive ROI without wasting too much money, but I'm seeing people not making money because they won't invest. And then I'm also seeing people saying, I've invested thousands and I'm not making any money. So I really wanted to talk about this because I would rather not have you waste your money. And I also don't want you to sit around complaining if you're not making any money because you're not putting any into it. Although I know what it is to bootstrap and I've been there. So having no money at the beginning does not mean that you can't invest. It just means you have to be a lot wiser and smarter and tighter with those choices and where you're spending the budget. So let's talk about this whole thing. We're going to start with over-investing because this one's really on my mind. I think I'm in a lot of blogging and writing groups, and I have seen this in both recently where people are saying they're coming in and they're posting and saying they're just super frustrated because they've invested in some cases, literally thousands of dollars, and they're not seeing a return yet. They're still in the red. So they have not made that money back that they've invested or anything on top of it, obviously, if they haven't made it back. So a lot of times what happens is there's this advice, and it often comes from people selling $1,000 courses or coaching programs that you need to invest when you start up. And I agree, you do. However, when you start up, you are starting up. You don't have a lot of money, probably. You don't have financial backers. You might have money. You might have some money you could invest, but that doesn't mean you should necessarily dump, at least not all of it, in at the beginning. So when people are saying you need to invest at the beginning, are they trying to sell you their course? Because and it's not to say those courses are bad or those people are bad, but I hear this the most from those people. And there have been times where I believed those people, and there was a time I bought a $1,000 course that was such a huge mistake. And not, I say huge just because it made me mad that I spent $1,000, and I saved for it because I was bootstrapping that year. So I waited until I had the month where I made the money to pay for that course. And then I was so incredibly disappointed with it. And I should have asked for a refund and didn't. So sometimes that just happens. But it's hard also when you want to connect with the person who's making the course, because then asking for a refund is like not the best. It sort of burns the bridge a little bit when you do that, especially if it's a smaller thing and there is kind of a relationship there. But in any case, I do hear this a lot from people who either take out big loans or get a whole credit card for their thing. And that's just, I wouldn't advise that. And I'm not a financial advisor, just FYI, all this money info. And you're going to hear later that I had to Google the terms gross and net because I'm not a financial advisor, you guys. However, I'm a no BS, no smarm kind of person. So just stick with me and I'm going to give you some good advice to take, although it will not be financial. Talk to a financial person. There are going to be some costs when you start up. Just there are, even if you're starting a blog. I mean, there are free places to start a blog, but if you're trying to make money, like if you're using the free WordPress site, you can't have ads on it. You can't make money doing that. If you're using WordPress.com. And just in case you don't know, there's a difference. WordPress.org, you own your website, you own your domain, and you're paying for both of those things. So, and you can run ads on that. So there are going to be some costs no matter what you're doing. But here's the thing. Your success will not match dollar for dollar what you put in, especially in the beginning, and especially if you're putting it in the wrong places, which is hard in the beginning to know. So I've seen a lot of people doing this where they're starting out and they're thinking, okay, I need to invest. So here's my $5,000. Well, moving on to kind of point number 2. So the first thing I've said was that you do need to invest, but it's not going to come back to you dollar for dollar. So you need to make sure that you're going to have a solid product first. If you're a writer, this means beta readers. It means asking for advice from other authors and other people. If there's a cheap coach, and this is writers or bloggers or whatever you're doing, if there's a cheap coach who will do a session for you, and I'm saying cheap, like $100 or less, that could be the best investment that you make. If someone will personally walk through and look at your platform for you or look at your book for you. And sometimes people will do that for free. When I was feeling like one of my books was not selling as well as I wanted it to, I emailed one of the more successful authors in the niche who I already had connected with. So it wasn't like I just randomly reached out and was like, do me a favor. And I said, hey, can I pay you to tell me why my book is not ranking the way I want it to rank? And she said, no, you can't pay me, but I'll tell you why. And she sent me an email back that was so incredibly helpful. That may not happen for you. And I was willing to pay. Again, it's okay to pay a little bit, but if you're able to get someone who actually knows what they're talking about to give you a one-on-one session to kind of help you look at your product, that's invaluable. I know Jim Kukral from the Sell More Books show has, I think, a free call through his author marketing club, and he has just rebranded. I wish I had the name on the top of my tongue so I could tell you. He'll do like a free 15-minute call, and I know he has other bigger paid packages. Ask in a Facebook group, although you always have to kind of, weigh the answers. You don't know who you're hearing from in there. But here's the thing that, this is why you need to make sure you have a solid product first. So if I'm going to use books because it's just such an easier example than trying to turn this to blogs, but really the same is true. If you are running ads in a book with a terrible cover, it's burning your money. It is just taking your money and putting it in a pile and setting it on fire. That's what you're doing. Because if your cover stinks, if it's not genre specific, it's not going to sell no matter how many Facebook ads you throw at it or AMS ads you throw at it. It's not going to sell. So you need to make sure you have a solid product first. And by product, that could mean your blog as well. If you're writing a mom blog and your blog looks like a emo rock star blog, which I don't know what that is. I'm imagining a black blog with white lettering and lots of like fire. Now I'm thinking of like 1999 blogs. So anyway, you need to make sure that your blog is sitting in the right position. You need to have a right product first to invest in, because otherwise you're just, again, burning your money. And so when you're asking people, this is another point, make sure you ask the right people. And this is hard because if you go to a Facebook group, which is a great place to ask often, although I would just watch the Facebook groups. I've seen some Facebook groups I would never ask a question in. Everyone does have a different opinion. So if you go in and say, hey, where did you invest your money at first? I think that's a great question to ask. Hey, bloggers, you have $200 to start out with. Where would that money go? Hey, writers, I've got $200. Where would that money go? You're going to hear a lot of different answers. And what I would say to pay attention to are the people who you know are doing well. You can't always tell this. With writers, you can go and check out their books. How are their books ranked on Amazon? If they're telling you to invest money and you go look and every one of their books is at like 80,000 or higher in terms of their Amazon ranking, I would listen to them less than someone who has at least 1 or 2 books that are down in the 10,000 mark or under in the Amazon rankings because they're selling books. People in the 50, 100,000, they're selling less books. So if you're going to listen to someone, you want to listen to someone who's actually selling books because they know what they're talking about. Because we all know this. You've seen the people who are giving advice and they have no idea what they're talking about. Now, this isn't always true because there are some people who are coaches who are really good at teaching, but they're not necessarily in that space. And that's just reality. That's how it is. I know I've been to blog conferences where people have talked about a social media platform and their own personal platform stinks. Like they were talking about Twitter and they have like 100 followers. But they also ran the Twitter account for a giant national brand and did a great job with it. So you have to kind of take those things into account. The immediate social proof isn't always the pudding, right? That did not work quite as an analogy, but you know what I'm saying. It doesn't always correlate, but you need to at least look at that. So what I did this past year when spending money is I watched the people who I knew were doing well. And I knew they were doing well because they were sharing about it publicly and I could see where their books were ranking. Those were the people that when they said they invested somewhere, I listened to them. So as much as you can, ask people, but vet the people that you listen to. And then this is a really big one. And it can be really hard, especially if you like buying, but make sure you're not just buying everything. We all should, even if you have money to begin with, we all should go in with a little caution and a little bit of bootstrapping. I just think it's good for you. Here's the other thing about that. You're learning as you go. And even if you have a solid product in the beginning, you're only going to get better. So for me, thinking about last year when I started the Emma Empire, as I call it, when I look back, my first 3 books were okay. The first one was not quite to market. I didn't have all the features necessarily that sweet romance readers typically look for. Technically, it was a sweet romance, but it didn't fall right in the middle of what's hot and selling. My second book, I liked a lot, but it was also more like women's fiction a little bit than sweet romance. And again, it was sweet, it was romance, it was clean, it fit all the boxes, but I wasn't reading enough in the genre, so it wasn't quite where it needed to be. The third one was, but because it was the first book I had written like that, because I'd read a lot more, it wasn't as good. My fourth book is where my sales took off. So you are constantly growing and getting better. And so if you're saving up the money to invest when you're more hitting your stride, it's going to bring more money back to you. So I invested a little bit in each of those books. The first 3, but I didn't go crazy. And then when I started to see that my books were getting the response they needed and I was getting to where I wanted to be in terms of ranking and sales, that's when I upped what I was spending. And so I think it's really important to think about that you have the right product, but as you go, you're getting better. And so it's okay at first to be a little bit more bootstrappy and a little bit more cautious where you're spending because you're going to get better at what you do. And I still like those first books. I think those first 3 books are good, but they don't ever sell as well. They don't have as many reviews. And my other ones, books 4 and beyond, continue to sell and sell well and outperform them like 10-1. So I think that's really important is for you to realize that you're going to get better. And so save some of that money. So if you have say you have $5,000, say you have this amazing $5,000 budget, do not blow it all at the beginning. Okay. Spend some at the beginning as you're getting started. And as you get better and you know what you're doing, then invest more. And kind of on the back of that, make sure you're not just doing what everyone else does. So I did make some mistakes as I was following people. And I've done this also kind of with blogging and podcasting that I invested in some products, some courses that I thought would really help. And it was just kind of a waste of money. And one of those things I did last year was I hired out AMS ads. And the girl I hired is fantastic. She did a really good job. But AMS ads, I just hadn't thought this deeply into it. I want to get better at them. But it was something I didn't want to spend time at. Writing a book a month, I didn't have time. So I was paying her like $200 a month to run AMS ads on like 7 or 8 of my books. She was checking them daily. She was doing work. She was doing that much work for me every month. However, I was not getting that return, especially considering what I was paying Amazon, because the margins on AMS ads are just lower, which means you might spend something and you might get a profit, but that little profit margin's lower. And because I was paying her as well as paying for the ads, I wasn't getting that money back. It sounded really cool to do that, and it took some stuff off my plate, but I still didn't need to do it. So I did it for 2 months. And again, I was testing a lot last year. I knew it was a test. So I did it for 2 months. And then told her, hey, I don't think this is making the money I need to, so I'm not going to use you this month and see what happens. And what happened is I made double the money the next month. And not just because I stopped, like that's not even taking into account the expense. I actually made double gross. And I'm going to talk about gross and net in a minute. In case you were like me and you always get confused about those terms because you don't do your own finances very much, gross is the total amount that includes the expenses. And then net is actually how much you get after you take out those expenses. So when I was paying her, my gross was half of what it was the month after I stopped paying her. So I actually made even more money because I cut my expenses that next month because I wasn't paying her $200 and I wasn't paying Amazon the hundreds of dollars, or I actually never spent hundreds on AMS ads, but I wasn't paying Amazon. I wasn't paying her. So I actually had lower expenses and had a higher income in terms of what I actually made gross, which meant I had more net. See, I'm learning these terms, you guys. Still not a financial advisor, clearly. Had to Google it. Okay, so don't just do what everybody else does. Don't get caught up on the bandwagon. Everybody's throwing their money into this. And then, get excited. And I'm in a group where people are running Facebook ads, and I was running Facebook ads. We're all excited. And then I was like, wait, I'm going to test this too. My ads seem to be working. And with Amazon, it's kind of hard sometimes to tell if they're working because you can't track things the way you want because of the way Amazon works. And then with page reads and Kindle Unlimited, this is very specific and gets nitty gritty. But anyway, it's hard to tell is what I'm saying. So I turned off my Facebook ads and I made the same amount of money as when I had them on, except I wasn't throwing away my money to Facebook. So I actually made more money. So again, like I was excited. They were excited. We were all just excited. And then I started seeing other people being like, hey, I'm also not making money actually. And so don't get excited where everyone's throwing their money and do that too. And then kind of in relation to that whole idea of gross and net, make sure that your goal is to make more net, not just to make more gross. And so what I mean by that is I hear a lot of people in Facebook groups talking about how much money they made, and they'll use the big gross number. Like I made $20,000 last month, but they don't really tell you what they spend. And then sometimes when you find out what they spend, you're kind of horrified. So someone was recently, I've actually heard a couple people, so I'm kind of going to give a composite here. So this is not one person, but just kind of a couple different people I've heard, and I'm making up the numbers for them. So I've heard a couple people and they were talking about, okay, I made $20K last month. And that sounds amazing. It is amazing. And then they said I spent $13K. So they spent $13,000 to make $20,000. That's still positive, right? So that's not necessarily a bad thing. But that's the same amount of money I made, except I spent like $1,000 or less. So I spent $1,000 to make $6,000. They spent, and actually, okay, so I spent $1,000 and ended up taking home $5,000, right? Because I made $6,000 but spent $1,000. So I invested $1,000 and then I netted $5,000. They spent $12,000 and netted $6,000. So we're really similar, but I'm just throwing away a lot less money. Now, when you're scaling up, sometimes you have to test, and there may be other reasons you want to invest, but that's a scary lot of money to invest. And if I can find a way to spend less and make more, that's going to be my goal. Now, when you're scaling up and, I would like to go to be making $10,000 to $20,000 a month. That's my goal. So I may have to spend more to get there. But that if I'm ever spending so much that I'm making the same amount that I'm making now when I'm not spending that much, something's broken. Okay. Unless I'm finding that I'm getting so many more readers that it ends up like kind of exploding. Like, so if I spend that much, that means I am making more book sales. I'm just making less money because a lot of it went to ads. But if that's bringing in people to my email list and readers who will stick with me and read my books, there is some lasting value. But if month after month, you're spending $12,000 to make, come home with $6,000 at the end, are you really better off than when, like if I have honed this, which I kind of have, of spending less than $1,000 a month to be making $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 a month, bringing that home with me, to me, that sounds better. And again, like I'm not the financial person and I'm not the smartest about things, but I see a lot of people who are barely breaking even, giving thousands and thousands of dollars to Facebook or other platforms. And I just have to ask why. Is there some other ROI that I don't know about? And maybe there is. So as you're thinking about this, I do have a post I'm linking to in the show notes called 6 Questions to Ask Before You Invest. And that would be a really good one to look at when you're trying to decide so that you're not over investing. Where should you invest? Now let's get to the opposite era. Let's get to the opposite error. Now both those words sound really weird. Any word you say more than one time in a row sounds weird. Error. I say error. Wow. I'm going to keep this in, y'all, because I love you. We're keeping this in here. So let's talk about the error of not investing in yourself. So we went on the extreme of investing in the wrong places and investing too much in the beginning when you don't know what you're doing. But now I'm going to go to the Facebook posts I've been seeing a lot lately of people like, I'm not making any money. And then someone will say, well, what are you doing? And like, well, I don't have any money. So I'm just writing a book and making a cover and putting it on Amazon. Well, they're never going to make any money that way. I mean, unless you have an accidental success, and those are very rare, you guys. It's just very rare that you're going to put up a book on Amazon and suddenly make any money at all, because there's something like millions of books, maybe more than just millions on Amazon, more being uploaded every single day. So that's just not going to cut it. It's just not. So you do need to invest, but you need to invest wisely. So when I was investing, I've shared some of the good investments I made last year, but I've been doing this whole internet stuff for a while, and email is my passion. And I know that email sells. I know that it works. So when I was starting out with Emma, I don't run amazing Facebook ads yet. It's something I'm getting better at. I'm starting to see results from them, but Facebook ads aren't the best place for me to start investing because one, I have to learn something, and two, it's a lot trickier. I could instead pay for an email promotion service like Robin Reads or eReader News Today, where you pay them a certain amount of money and they send out an email to their thousands and thousands of people lists. So whereas I have, when I started last year, I had 200 people on my list, but I could pay eReader News Today to send an email to their list with my book in it. And their list was like 30,000, 100,000. I'm fudging the numbers because all these sites have different thousands and I don't remember. But either way, it was more than I had. So I knew that was a safe bet because email sells more than social media. It just does. And research shows that. So I think I've harped on that like a million times lately. It just does. Research shows. Go ask Tim Grahl from the Book Lunch Show podcast. And he will tell you that email sells more than social media. So to me, that was a safe bet. I didn't have to learn. I was paying someone else to get in front of their audience that was already there, had signed up to buy books. It was not as risky as trying to run Facebook ads when I have to learn the platform. And again, sometimes you might know what you're doing and the ads don't work. And I've had that. I've taken several Facebook courses and have run ads that don't work. And so it's always a test. But paying someone to send to their list of ready and hungry readers, that is much more of a sure bet. So invest, but wisely. And then don't complain. Like I kind of touched on this in the beginning. Don't complain if you can't invest. We can't all invest and we can't all invest a lot, but you can't complain about your lack of profit if you can't invest something. Other ways that you could do things for free, newsletter swaps with other authors, bloggers, you could be using Pinterest and again, you could use the free PicMonkey, free Canva to create some very basic images to start getting traffic to your blog. You could work with other bloggers. You could do guest posts to get in front of a new audience. There's a lot of free ways to connect with an audience, to start building your audience and building your platform to build your income. Build your own community in a Facebook group. Help other people out for free. Ask other people if they want to trade things with you. Like, hey, I'll share your post if you share my blog post. Work with other people. Networking is free. Networking is free. So if you don't have money to invest in time and in relationships and in activities that are going to bring you in front of an audience and that will eventually bring you some income. And then there are going to be times where you should, and I would recommend investing so it hurts. So again, I do want you to bootstrap in the beginning, even if you have the money. Try to pretend like you don't and invest less in the beginning. I'm going to give you an example from author Jamie Albright, and she writes romance, not sweet romance, but I love her books. She has such a great writing voice. She has a Runaway Bride series that's really funny. So if you don't mind actual steamy scenes, it's not a million of them. It's not erotica, but there are some steamy scenes. So if you don't mind them and can get through a book and want to read some heartwarming and humorous, Jamie Albright's amazing. So when she started out, she didn't have the money to invest in an editor, which she knew she needed, and covers. She sold her plasma, and she sold her plasma until she could pay for covers and editors. Was it worth it? Well, she launched 2 books in a year, so it wasn't even rapid release, like one every month, which is what a lot of people are doing to make money. She made $50,000 gross. I'm not sure what her net was, but I know that she said that was the gross. There were expenses that had to be taken out of that, but she made enough to quit her full-time job and be a writer full-time. So, yep, it hurt. Probably literally, because she sold her plasma to get book covers. So when we're saying we don't have any money, think about this. Is there a place that you could hurt to find the money to invest in a book cover, or to invest in paying so that you could have your self-hosted WordPress site so you could get some ads up there, or, pay for an email list, that not buying an email list, but pay for like a provider like ConvertKit versus using something like MailChimp. If you really need to utilize email, it can be worth the investment. So where can it hurt? Could you stop going out to dinner? If you stop going out to dinner a couple times a month, how much money would you have to invest? If you stop buying Starbucks a couple times a month, how much would you have to invest? Could you get rid of Netflix? Not only save that cost per month, even though it's not a lot, but also the time that you would spend. Think about where you could hurt to invest. And so I think that that can also be really healthy sometimes as well. And I know when I was first starting with creative writing, there were a lot of places I wanted to invest, and I waited. I told myself, okay, I'm going to bargain with myself. When I hit this amount of sales per month, I'm going to invest in this product because I'll have the money then. And so sometimes that hurting is actually just waiting until you can afford it, and saving up and not spending the money where you want to, and not celebrating and taking yourself to a steak dinner, but saving that money and then investing. So it should hurt a little bit. And I think it's good for us. Like as a parent, when I am teaching my kids about money, I want to teach them that sometimes it needs to hurt. I know when I was younger, so I wear glasses, and I used to wear contacts, but I don't now. I don't think I've even put contacts in 2 years, which is crazy to think about. But when I was younger, I really hated wearing glasses. I hated, and I lost them constantly. So I still remember 5th grade, I got a pair of glasses, and they were like my favorite glasses, and I left them on the playground and they got crushed. Like I took them off instead of keeping them on my face the way you're supposed to, and they got crushed. So my mom had to buy me a new pair. So she bought me a new pair, and I had them, again, took them off my face, and I had them hooked onto the front of my shirt collar. You know how you could do that? You could put like one of the stems. I see people doing that. Stem isn't the right word, but the whatever goes over your ear. I've seen people do that with sunglasses. And I was in the bathroom, and when I went to flush the toilet, I leaned over to flush the toilet, and as I pressed it down, the glasses went into the toilet and flushed away. And I had the hardest time explaining to my mother how I flushed my glasses down the toilet, 2 pair in 1 month. So when I wanted contacts in middle school, my mom said, you can have them when you pay for them. And they were something like $100 or $200, which to, a 13, 14-year-old, that was a lot of money. I couldn't just save up. I didn't get a lot of allowance. I did babysitting. I actually think I won a contest. They have one of those magazine sales. I still remember this. You could grab, if you sold 4 magazines that day, you could grab into a grab bag, and there was one $50 bill and then like probably 10,000 $1 bills or something. I got the 50, and that went towards my contacts. And you know what? I cannot tell you when I have lost a contact. Okay. And that was like 14 when I started wearing them. So when you invest in a way that hurts you, you are more sort of cautious behind that investment. And so I think that that's a really good thing. You value it more. So there's nothing wrong with hurting a little bit, selling your plasma for a book cover. And then invest realizing there's not, or invest realizing there is ROI. So I've heard a lot of authors as well talk about like when they're saying they can't sell books, and I'll say, hey, here's what worked for me. I use these paid email promos, and they start at, let's see, last month I used one that was like $3, and I sold 25 books. And I had a whole lot of page reads. So it more than paid for itself. Not all of them are that good. And again, I tested last year. I kept a spreadsheet, even though that hurt me because I hate spreadsheets. I have kept spreadsheets so I can tell you this one worked for me and this one didn't. But I hear people saying, I can't afford it. Well, some of them are $20 and under. Do you really not have $20 to try to sell more of your books? I did, because it's been a while since I kept a spreadsheet. I kept one this month in January to check out my results. And I'm actually going to see if I can pull that up right here. I should have prepared for it, and I didn't. So I'm going to go and scroll for a second while I'm talking to get that up there. But I did keep a spreadsheet of every single day, what promos I paid for and what I got back for them. So let me see if I can pull that up. My computer is now starting to say, why do you have more than one thing open at this moment? I do not like it. Okay, launch stats. There it is. Okay, so I'm going to read to you some of the investments I made. I'm not telling you where I spent them, but just what. Okay, so one particular day I spent $3. I made $87. The next day I spent, and actually they're not all chronological days. The next investment was $25. I made $91. Another day I spent $60, made $117. Another I spent $60 and made $171. Those were back to back, so they probably helped each other. One day I spent $5 and made $168. That's incredible. I probably had another newsletter swap or something that day. And sometimes when they're back to back to back, like one day I spread them out. So like one is one day, one is another day, and it kind of just continues to build. Another day I spent $20 and made $168. I spent $26 and made $172. I spent $12 and made $142, $27 and made $92. So when we're talking about not being able to afford the investment, when you're investing, you're going to make some money, but it is a little bit of a risk. You're not sure, especially like, again, I've been testing and I have the money now. I'm making enough that I have the money to test a little bit further and wider. So I tested a few this month that were duds and I will never use again, but I needed to test because I was like, okay, I know these sites are good. Here are ones I haven't used. Let's check them out. And so you just have to understand that there is going to be an ROI. It is a little bit risky, but you just have to sometimes try it anyway. Track your results. Again, don't spend what you don't have. Don't go crazy. Start with a few, track things over time as you can, and make notes of what works so that you can spend on that as well. But the other thing about that is the ROI. This is what I see people saying about those promos. Like, I spent X amount of money and I only made this amount of money. I barely made it back. But you know what? It helped your rankings in Amazon. And if you're doing Kindle Unlimited where you have page reads, if you sell those books, so say you spent $20 and you only made $20, watch your page reads if you're in KU, because maybe on that day people picked up your book, but they didn't start reading it until the next day. So you're still actually making money on those page reads the next day. So when I say I spent $60 and made $172 or whatever, I might have actually made more from that, but you can't track it to the letter necessarily. But I can also say on some of those, I got up into the top 1,000 of the Amazon store, which is amazing because I stacked some of those promos. Would I have gotten to that ranking otherwise? No, I wouldn't have. And when you're in that ranking and you get higher and you get to a number one spot and you get that little bestseller flag, it's cool. It may only last for an hour, but it's cool. But it also means you're the most visible when people go to that category on Amazon. They see your book at the top. It must be good. It's at the top. So you're not just paying to get that direct money back. There's other ROI when you're investing in these different things, and some of it's more long-term. And lastly, I just kind of want to finish with this. Invest believing in yourself. So if you want to do something professionally and you want to actually make money doing it, this is reality. You will have to spend money. You will. No, you don't have to spend $10,000. No, you don't have to spend $1,000 on a specific course. No, you don't have to hire a coach. Some of those things can help. Like, for example, I know a lot of people who credit their success with doing something like the 90-day year with Todd Herman. And I think that's at least 1,000, maybe 2,000. But I know several people personally who have said that their success is fully because of that. So certain things are an investment. But again, if you're asking somebody, I can see a successful person and saying, what made you successful? They tell me, I'm going to trust them more than if you just hear a lot of course creators being like, oh, you need to invest money. Oh, and here's my $1,000 course. So again, not all those courses are equal, but you don't have to spend that, especially not at the beginning. And you probably shouldn't until you figure out what you're doing. So even if you have money, hold yourself back a little bit in the beginning, but you have to spend something. And if you're not willing to spend something, then it's a hobby. You can also spend money and have it be a hobby. There are certain expenses I have for my business that I'm not seeing a direct ROI. It's kind of a hobby. Right now, the podcast, I don't have a lot of paid products coming through this. Is it a hobby? I would say that it's more, but kind of, because I don't have sponsorships. I don't want them on this podcast. I'm not selling you my coaching packages. I'm not selling courses right now. This is a gift to you. It's a hobby for me. It's fun for me. Yes, it continues to build my brand. So there is a big longer term picture. Yes, I may start doing more products or services that relate to writing and the kind of things I talk about on the podcast, but I'm not doing them right now. So you may spend money and it's also a hobby, but if you're not spending money, it's a hobby. Okay. So if you want to invest and you want to see money come back, realize you have to spend something. Make it hurt, save, whatever it takes. Don't go too crazy and be wise about it. I don't want to see you wasting money, but I also don't want to see you trying to make it without actually doing what it takes to make it. And again, does not have to be that much money. So to conclude and leave you guys, I just want you to realize you can't spend money thinking that every dollar you spend is going to come back to you, because it takes some time. There's a learning curve. So don't just go in being like, I'm going to spend $10,000 and that's going to make me immediately successful. Nope, it won't, because you're learning as you grow. Invest a little upfront and then continue to invest more as you find success and find your stride. And you can't not spend money and think you're going to make any progress. Maybe you'll make progress, but much more slowly, or maybe you won't make progress at all. But if you want to make progress, if you want to make money, if you want to be serious and call it a profession and a business, then you have to be willing to invest something. And if you're working another job to fund your first job or your second job, then maybe that's what you're doing. Creative writing, the money that I make every month from affiliate sales, because I still do make money with creative writing, the website, and I have affiliate sales like ConvertKit where I get paid every single month for people who have signed up under me. So I still make money with creative writing. That money is what I use to fund my Emma empire. So thanks, creative writing. You funded Emma's empire. Now Emma's making money. So you can find one place to pay for another, but if you want to find success, say it with me, you've got to invest something. So I hope that this is encouraging and motivating to you, but also gives you some practical things to avoid and things to maybe do. And maybe we'll have a Facebook discussion in the community on where you've spent money so it hurts, because I really like that topic, or things maybe you've given up at times to get something else. So if you're not in the community, go to creativewriting.com/community. It's a free Facebook group where we hang out, talk, very positive, not smarmy or self-promoty, although we do have a share weekend on the weekends where you can share your links and see what other community members are up to. Again, if you want the links from this week's show notes, go to creativewriting.com/149. And if you want my weekly email so that you can get a nudge that a new podcast episode is out, and you want to get tips, resources, and more for writers, bloggers, and creatives, then just go to creativewriting.com/quick fix to get my weekly emails. That's it for this week, you guys. I hope that you can go out and create content that you love and serve your people well.